The research ship Meridian drifted slowly through the darkness of space. Its hull was painted white with blue stripes, and small lights blinked along its sides. Inside the ship, Dr. Alina worked at her computer. She was looking at data from a planet far below them. The planet had thick clouds and strange colors that changed like oil on water. Alina was 28 years old and loved studying alien worlds. She had brown hair tied back in a simple ponytail and wore the standard blue uniform of Earth's Deep Space Research Division. Her team had been in space for 6 months, moving from planet to planet and taking measurements. The atmosphere readings are strange, Alina said to her teammate David. He was a tall man with gray hair who had been working in space for 15 years. This planet has gases we have never seen before. David looked at his own screen. Maybe we should get closer. Take some samples. Captain Beck will not like that, Alina said. He wants us to stay far from unknown planets. Captain Beck was in charge of their mission. He was a careful man who followed all the rules. The crew of 12 people trusted him to keep them safe. Alina continued working when suddenly all the lights on the ship turned red. A loud alarm began to ring. The computer screens showed a big ship coming toward them very fast. Unknown vessel approaching, the ship's computer said in a calm voice. Warning, unknown vessel approaching. Captain Beck's voice came through the speakers. All crew to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Alana and David ran to the main deck. Through the big window, they could see a massive black ship. It was 3 times bigger than the Meridian and had a strange shape like a giant insect. Sharp points stuck out from its sides, and green lights moved across its surface like crawling bugs. I have never seen anything like that, David whispered. The alien ship moved without making any sound. It came alongside the Meridian and stopped. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a bright blue beam shot out from the alien ship and hit their vessel. All the power went out. The lights died, the computer stopped working, and even the air system became quiet. The Meridian was dead in space. Emergency power, Captain Beck shouted, but nothing happened. Through the window, Alina saw part of the alien ship opening like a mouth. Metal arms reached out and grabbed their ship. The Meridian shook and groaned as the aliens pulled it inside their vessel. Everyone stay calm, Captain Beck said. But his voice was not calm at all. Alina felt scared, but also curious. These were the first aliens her team had ever met. She wondered what they looked like and why they had stopped the Meridian. The alien ship's mouth closed around them. Alina heard strange sounds through the walls, clicking and buzzing like giant insects, talking to each other. The temperature began to drop, and she could see her breath in the air. Suddenly, the wall of their ship began to glow red hot. The aliens were cutting through the metal. Alina and her team moved to the back of the main deck and waited. The wall exploded inward with a shower of sparks and hot metal. Smoke filled the room. Through the hole came the aliens. Alina gasped when she saw them. They were 7 feet tall and looked like giant ants walking on 2 legs. Their skin was dark green and shiny like metal. They had 4 arms each, with hands that ended in sharp claws. Their heads were long and thin with big black eyes that reflected the emergency lights. The aliens moved quickly and did not make any sound with their feet. They carried long silver sticks that shot blue beams of light. When the beams hit Alina's teammates, they fell down and did not move. Do not hurt them, Captain Beck shouted. We are peaceful explorers. One of the aliens turned its big black eyes toward the captain. It made a clicking sound and shot him with the blue beam. Captain Beck fell to the floor like the others. Alina tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. 2 aliens grabbed her arms with their 4 hands. Their grip was very strong, and their claws dug into her skin. She could smell something like old metal and chemicals coming from their bodies. The aliens carried Alina through the hole in the wall and into their ship. The hallways were dark and cold. Strange symbols glowed on the walls in green light. The air felt thick and hard to breathe. They brought her to a large room filled with cages. Inside the cages, Elena saw creatures she had never imagined. Some looked like giant birds with fur instead of feathers. Others were small and gray with too many eyes. One creature looked almost human, but had blue skin and gills on its neck. All the creatures in the cages looked sick and hurt. Many had bandages or metal devices attached to their bodies. They moved slowly, and their eyes looked empty and sad. Elena realized with horror that these aliens collected living beings from different worlds. The cages were full of prisoners from across the galaxy. The aliens put Elena in an empty cage at the end of the row. The cage was just big enough for her to stand up and lie down. The floor was cold metal with small holes in it. There was a bowl of water and nothing else. One alien stayed behind when the others left. This one was different from the soldiers who had captured her. It was taller and wore a white covering over part of its body. Its eyes were bigger and seemed more intelligent. The alien studied Elena like she was an interesting rock or plant. It held a small device that made beeping sounds when pointed at her. The alien clicked and buzzed to itself as it looked at the device's readings. Elena tried to talk to it. "Please," she said. "I am a scientist like you. We can learn from each other." The alien tilted its head and made more clicking sounds. It did not seem to understand that Elena was trying to communicate. To the alien, she was just another specimen to study. The alien made notes on a tablet and then left the room. Elena was alone with the other prisoners. She looked around at the creatures in their cages and felt a deep sadness. These beings had families and homes on distant worlds. Now they were trapped in this terrible place. Elena sat down on the cold floor of her cage. She was scared but tried to stay strong. She was a scientist and would use her mind to understand these aliens and find a way to escape. But first, she needed to learn what they wanted with her and the other prisoners. The clicking sounds and the strange devices suggested they were researchers too. But what kind of research required keeping living beings in cages? Elena had a feeling she would find out soon enough. Elena had been in the cage for 3 days when the tall alien in white came back. It carried a small box with wires and metal pieces sticking out of it. Behind the alien, 2 soldiers followed with more devices. The alien opened Elena's cage and pointed a silver stick at her. Elena knew what would happen if she tried to run. She had seen other prisoners get hit with the blue beams when they fought back. "Please," Elena said again. "I am a scientist. I study planets and stars. We can work together." The alien made clicking sounds but did not stop. It grabbed Elena's arm with 2 of its hands and pulled her out of the cage. Its claws were sharp and left small cuts on her skin. They took Elena to a different room. This room was bright white and clean like a hospital. Metal tables filled the space, and strange machines hung from the ceiling. The walls were covered with screens showing numbers and symbols in the alien language. The alien soldiers pushed Elena onto one of the metal tables. Cold metal straps closed around her arms and legs automatically. She could not move at all. The tall alien, which Elena began to think of as the doctor, approached with its box of wires. It made more clicking sounds, and one of the screens on the wall lit up with Elena's picture. The doctor attached small metal discs to Elena's head. The discs were cold and stuck to her skin. Immediately, Elena felt a strange tingling sensation in her brain. "What are you doing?" Elena asked, but the doctor did not answer. The machine above Elena began to hum. The metal discs on her head grew warm, then hot. Elena felt something probing inside her mind, like invisible fingers touching her thoughts and memories. She saw flashes of her childhood on Earth, her mother teaching her to ride a bicycle, her father showing her the stars through a telescope, her first day at university studying space science. The memories felt bright and sharp, more real than the cold room around her. The doctor watched the screens and made notes on its tablet. The machine's humming grew louder. Elena's head began to hurt as the alien device dug deeper into her mind. For 2 hours, the doctor explored Elena's memories. It seemed especially interested in her emotions, her fear when she first left Earth, her excitement when we discovered a new type of planet, her sadness when her grandfather died. Elena tried to resist, but she could not stop the machine from reading her thoughts. She felt violated and angry. These aliens were not just studying her body, they were stealing pieces of her soul. When the session ended, the doctor removed the metal discs and made final notes. Elena's head throbbed with pain. The soldiers carried her back to her cage, and she collapsed on the cold metal floor. The next day, they came for her again. This time, the doctor had different devices. It injected strange liquids into Elena's arm and watched how her body reacted. Some of the liquids made her very hot. Others made her so cold she could not stop shaking. The doctor measured everything: her heart rate, her breathing, her brain activity. It seemed to be mapping how human bodies worked under stress. On the 3rd day of testing, the doctor brought a machine that sent electric shocks through Elena's body. The shocks were not strong enough to kill her, but they hurt terribly. The doctor wanted to see how much pain a human could endure before losing consciousness. Elena gritted her teeth and tried not to scream. She did not want to give the aliens the satisfaction of breaking her spirit. But as the hours passed and the shocks continued, her resistance began to weaken. Between sessions, Elena lay in her cage and watched the other prisoners. She noticed that many of them had been here for a long time. Some had missing limbs that the aliens had removed for study. Others sat in corners of their cages and did not move, their minds broken by whatever tests they had endured. Elena began to understand the horrible truth. These aliens did not see her as a person. To them, she was just an interesting animal to take apart and study. They had no concept of rights or mercy or the value of life. The creature in the cage next to Elena's was one of the blue-skinned beings with gills. It had been watching Elena since she arrived. During a quiet moment, it spoke to her in broken English. "You. New," the creature said. Its voice was weak and raspy. "They study you. Long time, like they study me. How long have you been here?" Elena whispered. "Many cycles. Home. Far away. Family. Think me. Dead." Elena felt tears in her eyes. This creature had a family that missed it, just like her own family on Earth probably missed her. "What do they want?" Elena asked. "Knowledge," the creature replied. "They collect knowledge about all life, pain. Fear. Death. They want to know everything." Elena realized that these aliens traveled the galaxy like cosmic predators, capturing representatives of every species they found. They were building a massive database of biological information, and they did not care how much suffering they caused. On the 4th day, the doctor brought Elena to a new room. This room was different from the others. The walls were black and strange symbols glowed with red light. In the center of the room stood a large machine that looked like a metal spider. The doctor strapped Elena into the machine. Metal arms extended and touched different parts of her body. Elena felt something probing her nervous system directly, sending waves of pain through every nerve. The machine was designed to stimulate every pain receptor in her body simultaneously. Elena had never imagined that such agony was possible. She screamed until her voice was gone, then screamed silently as the machine continued its work. The doctor watched her suffering with the same calm interest it had shown during all the other tests. It made notes and adjusted the machine's settings, increasing and decreasing the pain to map her responses. Hours passed. Elena's body began to shut down from the trauma. Her heart rate became irregular, and her breathing grew shallow. Still, the doctor continued its work. Elena found herself thinking about Earth. She pictured the blue sky and white clouds, the feeling of grass under her feet, the sound of birds singing in the morning. She held on to these memories as the only things the aliens could not take from her. The machine's arms retracted. Elena hung limply in the restraints, barely conscious. The doctor examined her readings one final time and made a note that seemed to indicate satisfaction with the data. Collected. As the soldiers carried Elena back to her cage, she realized that her body was failing. The constant testing and torture had pushed her beyond her limits. She could feel her strength leaving her with each heartbeat. Elena closed her eyes and thought about her team aboard the Meridian. She hoped they were still alive somewhere in this terrible ship. She hoped that someday, someone would come to rescue the prisoners in these cages. Elena was beginning to understand that she might not live to see that day. Elena lay on the floor of her cage, breathing slowly. Each breath was harder than the last. Her body had endured 6 days of constant testing and torture. The aliens had pushed her past every limit they could measure. The doctor stood outside her cage with its tablet, recording her final moments. To the alien, this was simply the end of a successful experiment. It had gathered more data about human biology than it had hoped for. Elena's heart began to beat irregularly. She could feel it skipping and stumbling in her chest. Her vision grew dark around the edges. The sounds of the other prisoners became distant and muffled. She thought about her parents on Earth. They would never know what happened to her. They would wait for messages that would never come. Elena wished she could tell them that she loved them one more time. Her breathing stopped. Her heart gave one final beat and then was still. The machines monitoring her vital signs went silent. The doctor made a note on its tablet. Subject expired after 144 hours of continuous study. Cause of death: multiple organ failure due to extreme stress. The time was recorded as 15:47 ship time. Elena was dead. The doctor left to analyze its data. The soldiers would return later to remove her body and clean the cage for the next prisoner. This was routine for them. They had processed thousands of specimens over the years. In the cold, quiet cage, Elena's body lay motionless. The other prisoners had witnessed another death. Some of them made soft sounds of mourning in their own languages. They had grown to respect the human who had endured so much for so long. 30-7 minutes passed. At 16:24, something impossible happened. Elena's chest moved. It was just a small movement, barely visible. Then it happened again. Her heart began to beat. Slowly at first, then stronger and more regular. Her lungs filled with air. Blood began to flow through her veins again, but something was different. As Elena's body healed itself, changes were happening that no one could see. Her brain, which had been damaged by the alien experiments, was rebuilding itself in new ways. New connections formed between neurons. Areas of her brain that humans normally could not access began to activate. The extreme trauma and death had somehow unlocked capabilities that had been sleeping in her genetic code for thousands of years. Elena's eyes opened. They were still brown, but now they seemed to hold a different kind of awareness. She could see the electromagnetic fields generated by the alien machines. She could hear radio transmissions passing through the ship's hull. Information flowed into her mind from sources she had never known existed. She sat up slowly, testing her body. Everything worked perfectly. The cuts and bruises from her torture were gone. Her muscles were strong again. It was as if the damage had never happened. But Elena knew she had died. She remembered the feeling of her heart stopping and her consciousness fading away. Yet here she was, alive and somehow better than before. The blue-skinned prisoner in the next cage stared at her with wide eyes. It had watched Elena die, and now it was watching her return to life. The creature made a soft sound that might have been a prayer in its own language. Elena looked around the room with her enhanced vision. She could see patterns in the alien technology that had been invisible before. The walls were filled with circuits and data conduits. The cages were connected to a central monitoring system that recorded everything the prisoners did. She focused on the lock of her cage. It was a complex electronic device that responded to signals from the doctor's tablet. But Elena could now perceive the electromagnetic frequencies it used. She began to understand how it worked. Elena placed her hand on the lock and concentrated. She could feel the electronic patterns flowing through it. With her new abilities, she reached into the system and changed the signals. The lock clicked open. Elena stepped out of her cage for the first time since her capture. The other prisoners watched in amazement. Some of them had been trying to escape for years, but none had ever managed to open their cages. She walked to the control panel on the wall. The alien symbols that had been meaningless before now made sense to her. She could read their language as easily as English. The panel controlled all the environmental systems in the prison. Elena touched the panel and felt the data flowing through the ship's computer network. There was so much information. Maps of the ship, records of experiments, communications with other alien vessels. Her enhanced mind absorbed it all in seconds. She learned that this ship was called the Seeker of Truth and was part of a vast fleet that traveled the galaxy collecting specimens. The aliens called themselves the Hegemony, and they had been conducting these experiments for over 3,000 years. Elena also discovered something that made her angry. The Hegemony had detailed files on Earth and humanity. They had been watching human civilization develop for centuries, waiting for the right time to begin harvesting specimens. Her team on the Meridian had not been captured by accident. The aliens had specifically targeted their research ship because they wanted to study human scientists. Elena and her colleagues had been chosen before they ever left Earth. As Elena accessed more of the ship's data, alarms suddenly began to ring. The Hegemony's computer systems had detected unauthorized access to their networks. Security protocols activated automatically. Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside the prison room. Soldiers were coming to investigate the security breach. Elena quickly returned to the other control panels. With her new understanding of alien technology, she began to override the security systems. She opened all the cage locks simultaneously, freeing every prisoner in the room. The creatures inside the cages looked at their open doors with confusion and hope. Many of them had given up all thoughts of escape long ago. "You are free," Elena told them in multiple languages. Her enhanced brain allowed her to communicate in ways she had never been able to before. The prison room door burst open, and 6 alien soldiers rushed in. They saw Elena standing free among the open cages and immediately raised their weapons. Elena did not run or hide. She stood calmly and looked at the soldiers with her changed eyes. She could see the energy patterns in their weapons and the neural activity in their brains. The soldiers fired their blue beams at Elena. The energy struck her but did not knock her unconscious as it had before. Her transformed body absorbed the energy and converted it into something else. Elena raised her hand, and the soldiers' weapons stopped working. The energy patterns that powered them simply ceased to exist. The aliens looked at their useless weapons with confusion and fear. For the first time since her capture, Elena smiled. She was no longer the helpless prisoner they had tortured and killed. She had become something new, something the Hegemony had never encountered in all their centuries of experimentation. The soldiers backed away from her, clicking and buzzing in their own language. Elena understood every word. They were calling for help and reporting that their prisoner had somehow become dangerous. Elena looked at the freed prisoners around her. Some were still too weak to move, but others were gathering courage from her example. They had watched her die and return, and now they saw her facing their captors without fear. The blue-skinned creature approached Elena slowly. "What are you?" it asked in its broken English. Elena considered the question. She was still human, but she was also something more. The aliens had tried to break her down and catalog her limitations. Instead, they had accidentally shown her capabilities she never knew existed. "I am what they made me," Elena replied. "And now I am going to make them pay for what they did to all of us." Elena walked through the corridors of the alien ship with confidence. The freed prisoners followed behind her, moving carefully through the dark hallways. Many of them were weak from their time in captivity, but they drew strength from Elena's transformation. The ship's computer systems were trying to track Elena's location, but she stayed ahead of them. Every time the hegemony activated a security scanner, Elena disrupted its signals. She had become invisible to their technology. Elena reached a junction in the corridor and stopped. Her enhanced senses detected something important nearby. Behind a thick metal door, she could feel the electromagnetic signatures of more prisoners. She placed her hand on the door's control panel. The alien symbols glowed as she accessed the ship's database. What she found there made her stomach turn with disgust. This section of the ship contained over 200 prisoners from 40 different worlds. The hegemony had been collecting specimens for months, building up a large supply for their experiments. Elena saw the files of creatures that looked like flowers but could think and feel. Others resembled crystals but had complex nervous systems. Elena opened the door and found herself in a massive chamber filled with containment units. Each unit held a different type of alien life form. The diversity was incredible, but so was the suffering. Every creature here had been torn away from their home and family. As Elena freed the prisoners in this section, she continued to access the ship's computer network. The more she learned about the hegemony, the angrier she became. The aliens had detailed records of their experiments going back thousands of years. They had tortured and killed millions of beings from across the galaxy. They believed that by cataloging the biological responses of every species, they could understand the fundamental nature of life itself. Elena discovered that the hegemony saw themselves as the ultimate scientists. They believed their research justified any amount of suffering they caused. In their view, lesser species existed only to provide data for their studies. Elena also found something the hegemony did not know about humans. Deep in their own computer files, she discovered references to an ancient species that had once resisted them. This species had the ability to transcend death under extreme circumstances, becoming something far more powerful than they had been before. The hegemony had encountered this species only once, over 2,000 years ago. The encounter had been so traumatic for them that they had avoided that region of space ever since. The files were classified at the highest level, known only to the hegemony's leaders. Elena realized that humans were related to this ancient species. The ability to return from death and gain enhanced capabilities was not unique to her. It was a dormant trait that all humans carried in their genetic code. The hegemony had made a terrible mistake. By torturing Elena to death, they had activated abilities that had been sleeping in humanity for millennia. Elena was not an exception. She was the first of what humans could become. As Elena absorbed this information, alarms began ringing throughout the ship. The hegemony had realized that their security had been completely compromised. Emergency protocols activated, sealing sections of the ship and preparing for a complete lockdown. Elena heard the clicking voices of alien soldiers moving through the corridors. They were searching for her with increasing desperation. She had already freed over 300 prisoners, and their carefully controlled environment was falling apart. The doctor that had conducted Elena's experiments appeared on the ship's communication screens. It was speaking to the other hegemony researchers, trying to understand what had happened to their human specimen. Elena could hear and understand every word. The doctor was afraid. It had never seen anything like Elena's transformation, and it did not know how to stop her. The alien was beginning to realize that they had awakened something beyond their comprehension. Elena made her way to the ship's central computer core. This was the brain of the vessel, containing all the hegemonies, research data, and controlling their operations. If she could access it directly, she could learn everything about their activities across the galaxy. The computer core was heavily guarded, but Elena's new abilities made the defenses useless. She walked through energy barriers that should have killed her. She disabled security systems with a thought. The hegemony's most advanced technology could not stop her. When Elena reached the core, she placed both hands on the central processing unit. Immediately, her consciousness expanded beyond the ship. She could feel the computer networks of other hegemony vessels scattered across space. There were hundreds of them, all conducting similar experiments on captured beings. Elena saw the full scope of the hegemony's operations. They had research stations hidden throughout the galaxy. They had been operating for so long that they had become legends. Among some species, mysterious beings who stole people in the night and were never seen again. But Elena also found something else in the vast network of data. The hegemony kept detailed records of every species they had encountered. They had genetic samples and biological information from thousands of different worlds. Among this data, Elena found the location of Earth. She found files on her own species, including detailed plans for harvesting more human specimens. The hegemony had been planning to return to Earth and capture hundreds of humans for their experiments. Elena felt a surge of protective anger. These aliens had not only tortured her and countless others, they were planning to do the same to her entire species. She could not let that happen. Using her connection to the computer network, Elena began to send a signal toward Earth. Her enhanced abilities allowed her to boost the transmission far beyond what should have been possible. The message would take time to reach her home planet, but it would get there. The message contained everything Elena had learned about the hegemony. It included their locations, their methods, and most importantly, the revelation about human potential. Elena's people needed to know what they were capable of becoming. As Elena sent her message, the ship's defenses finally located her position. Heavy doors slammed shut around the computer core, trapping her inside. The hegemony was attempting to contain her, even if it meant destroying their own central computer. Elena felt the ship's weapons powering up. The hegemony had decided that their research data was less important than stopping her. They were preparing to destroy the computer core with her inside it, but Elena was not worried. She had already accomplished what she came to do. The prisoners were free, the message to Earth was sent, and she had learned the truth about human capabilities. Elena smiled as she felt the weapons charging. The hegemony thought they could kill her again, but they did not understand what she had become. Death was no longer permanent for her. She could return as many times as necessary. The aliens had created their own worst enemy. By trying to understand human limitations, they had instead unleashed human potential. Elena was just the beginning. As the weapons fired toward the computer core, Elena closed her eyes and prepared for her second death. But this time, she knew she would return stronger than before. And when she did, the hegemony would learn what it truly meant to face an angry human who could not be killed. The explosion filled the computer core with brilliant light. The ship shook from the impact. In the corridors, the freed prisoners felt the vibration and wondered if their savior had survived. They would not have to wait long to find out. The explosion in the computer core sent shockwaves through the entire ship. Emergency lights flickered on as the main power systems failed. In the corridors, freed prisoners huddled together, wondering if Elena had survived the blast. Smoke poured from the damaged computer core. The hegemony soldiers who had fired the weapons watched their screens, waiting for confirmation that the human was dead. The doctor stood among them, its black eyes reflecting the emergency lights. 20 minutes passed, then 30. The soldiers began to relax. No life form could survive a direct hit from their most powerful weapons. Then the smoke began to clear, and a figure emerged from the wreckage. Elena walked out of the destroyed computer core, completely unharmed. Her clothes were torn, but her body showed no signs of damage. She looked at the weapons aimed at her and smiled calmly. The soldiers fired again. Beams of energy struck Elena from multiple directions, but she absorbed them all. The power that should have killed her instead made her stronger. Her eyes began to glow with a soft blue light. Impossible, the doctor clicked in its own language. Elena understood every word. You were right about one thing, Elena said, speaking in the alien tongue. I am impossible. You made me that way. Elena raised her hand, and all the weapons in the corridor stopped working. The soldiers looked at their useless devices with growing fear. They had never encountered anything that could neutralize their technology so easily. Elena began walking toward them. With each step, more of the ship's systems failed around her. Lights went out, computer screens went dark, and the air recycling systems stopped humming. You have spent thousands of years studying life, Elena said to the doctor. But you never understood what you were looking for. You thought pain and death were just data to collect. You were wrong. The doctor backed away from Elena. It's four. Arms reaching for emergency controls on the wall. It activated a distress signal, calling for help from other hegemony ships in the area. Elena sensed the signal being sent, and reached out with her mind to intercept it. Instead of a call for help, she changed the message. The other hegemony ships would receive coordinates that would lead them into a trap. Your experiments are over, Elena told the doctor. All of them. Elena spread her awareness throughout the ship's remaining systems. She could feel every prisoner still trapped in other sections. With a thought, she opened every cage, every cell, every containment unit. The sound of opening locks echoed through the corridors like a symphony of freedom. The freed prisoners began to move through the ship. Many of them were still weak, but they helped each other reach the escape pods and shuttle bays. Species that had never met before worked together, united by their shared suffering under the hegemony. Elena found her way to the section where her original crew was being held. David, Captain Beck, and the others were alive but unconscious in medical restraints. The aliens had been keeping them sedated while they decided what experiments to perform. Elena woke her colleagues gently. Their eyes opened slowly, confused by their surroundings. When they saw Elena, they barely recognized her. She looked the same, but something fundamental had changed. Elena, David whispered. What happened to you? You look different. I died, Elena said simply. Then I came back. She quickly freed her crew and explained what had happened. They listened in amazement as she described her transformation and her new abilities. When she told them about the hegemony's plans for Earth, their faces grew grim. We have to warn everyone, Captain Beck said. Earth needs to know about this threat. I already sent a message, Elena replied. But we need to make sure it gets through. The hegemony has ways of blocking communications across space. Elena led her crew through the ship toward the main communication array. Along the way, they met groups of freed prisoners heading for the escape routes. The ship was filled with dozens of different species, all working together to get away from their captors. In the communication center, Elena accessed the transmission equipment with her enhanced abilities. She boosted the signal she had sent to Earth, making sure it would penetrate any interference the hegemony might try to use. The message contained detailed information about hegemony operations, their locations throughout the galaxy, and most importantly, the truth about human potential. Elena's transformation was not unique to her. It was something all humans could achieve under the right circumstances. Elena also included instructions. If the hegemony did attack Earth, humans needed to know how to trigger their hidden capabilities. The process was dangerous and often fatal, but it was better than helpless captivity. As Elena worked, The doctor appeared in the communication center with a squad of soldiers. They had tracked her movements through the ship and cornered her in the confined space. "You will not destroy our research," the doctor said. "We have spent millennia building our database of life. It is the greatest scientific achievement in galactic history." Elena turned to face the alien that had tortured her to death. She felt no hatred, only sadness for a species that had lost its way so completely. "Your research is built on suffering," Elena said. "You have learned nothing valuable because you refuse to understand that other beings are not just specimens. They are people with thoughts and feelings and families." "Sentiment," the doctor replied. "We study reality, not emotions." Elena reached out with her mind and touched the doctor's consciousness. For a moment, she let the alien feel what its prisoners had experienced. She showed it the fear, the pain, the desperation of thousands of beings torn from their homes. Doctor staggered backward, overwhelmed by the flood of emotions. It had never considered that its subjects were capable of such complex inner lives. To the hegemony, other species were just collections of biological processes to be catalogued. "Now you understand," Elena said. "This is what you have been doing for thousands of years." Elena turned back to the communication equipment and sent one final message to Earth. This one was personal, addressed to her family and friends. She told them she was alive and coming home, but she was not the same person who had left. Behind her, the hegemony soldiers raised their weapons one last time. But before they could fire, the ship's hull began to buckle. Other vessels were approaching. Fast, not hegemony ships, but something else entirely. Through the viewports, Elena could see sleek silver ships surrounding the alien vessel. They belonged to some of the species the hegemony had been hunting. Word of the prison ship's vulnerability had spread, and now the hunters had become the hunted. Elena smiled as she felt the ship shudder under weapons fire from outside. The hegemony had made enemies across the galaxy, and now those enemies were working together to end their reign of terror. The doctor and its soldiers fled toward the escape pods, abandoning their research and their prisoners. They had finally encountered something they could not control or understand, and their only thought was survival. Elena gathered her crew and the remaining prisoners. Together, they made their way to the shuttle bay where human and alien vessels waited to take them to safety. The nightmare was over, but Elena knew this was just the beginning. Humanity had been awakened to its true potential. The galaxy would never be the same.